So it's Paul, you get to hear me all over again, you lucky people. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you relatively quickly, or as quickly as I can, go through the steps of putting together that time-lapse movie again. So I have, I've got Premiere open, I've also got Lightroom open. Lightroom is what I'm going to go into first, and I'm going to hit import in Lightroom. And then I'm going to scroll. When I get to it, I'm going to go down to my desktop, which is where I've got the files that we need. So the first one I'm going to import is this particular one, but I also need to import the one that says time-lapse 2. Now what happened with the images is that halfway through the sequence it went into a new folder, so hence it's been spread into 2 different folders. You can see at the end of this one, if I scroll right down to the very end of it, there's a lot of images. We're going to untick that one because we don't need to see that one, but you can see it goes to 9999, and then so we also need to add in this one, time-lapse 2. So I'm going to hold down Command and click, and that will also add that one. So if I go all the way down to where 9999 was, where are we? Here we go, 9999, and then it starts at 0001 again. Excuse me. So I need to import both of those. So I'm going to go ahead, once they're all ticked, I'm going to go ahead and click import. And it will relatively, certainly a lot quicker than the machine downstairs in the shed at university. It will import those a lot quicker. There we go, they're already imported. So you can see that we're going from file number 1, which is here, all the way down to file number 769. Okay, what I'm going to do is I am going to make some adjustments, because if you look at the colour, I had a Kelvin white balance on, and that Kelvin white balance was set at 5700 Kelvin, which is a good daylight filter, good daylight balance I should say. But obviously with the fluorescent lights in the coffee pod, there's a bit of yellow there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the first image, and just the first image, and then I'm going to go into the develop module. So I'm going to hit D, which will take me into the develop module in Lightroom. And then what I'm going to do is with this one, actually, if I just hit white balance into auto, that immediately fixes that color. You can see there. I can add a little bit more exposure to it, brighten it up, bit of contrast if I want. I can fiddle around with highlights and shadows and whites and blacks, and I can also put filters in. So if I go for something like a graduated filter, and I'm, you know, just for example, you're going to drag a graduated filter in there just to increase the light towards the top. But that's done. I'm not going to do a great deal more than that, and the graduate filter is really just to show you the sort of things that you can do if you're dealing with sky, for example. And that one's done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that first image again, and I can either, I've got 2 choices, I can scroll all the way to the end and hold down Shift and then click the last image, or I can just do Command A, and that will select them all. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this sync button, which I'll hit, and it comes up with synchronized settings. And pretty much the ones that are defaulted as being ticked in here, they're pretty much the ones that you need. Just be careful, like there we go, if you've put a graduated filter in or something like that, you also need to click to add the local adjustments to it. And then I'm going to hit synchronize, and that will take a little while, but again, so much quicker than the machine in the portal cabin. And that will now, if I go to these images, you can see that the white has been corrected. The color's been corrected. You can see it moving across all of these now. There we go. We've got perfect color. Everything's white. Yeah. It's just taking a little while to update, so we'll just let it continue running before we go any further. So we'll just give it a second just to finish the job that it's doing. Let's let it run through all of this page. You can see it clicking along the bottom as it turns all of them to white as opposed to that yellow cast. Okay, what we're looking at down the bottom is just the previews. So you can actually quite successfully move on from here. So I've done all of that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click that first one again and then click Command A to make sure that they're all selected. And then I'm going to go either to File, Export, okay, or I'm going to Control click or right click on that timeline and go to Export. Either way is fine, but go to Export. And then you're going to export it to the hard drive, export to the desktop, and you're going to put it into a subfolder, and you're going to name that subfolder time-lapse named files. Okay, or something similar, or just time-lapse rocks, or time-lapse like a god, or whatever. It's up to you. Okay, next thing you're going to do is you're going to hit rename to, and you're going to do it custom name -sequence. Okay, this bit is really important to be sure that your images are in the right order. So I'm just going to call it time lapse, and then I'm going to the start number is going to be, for me, is going to be 01, and that's exactly how that should be done. Then we're going to scroll down a bit further. We're going to go to image format, JPEG, leave it as JPEG. You can, I would set the image quality to 100%. You can do it in Adobe RGB, that's fine. I'm not going to resize. I'm not going to bother doing that, but I am going to change the resolution to 300 pixels per inch. This bit is important. Make sure you're in per inch, not in per centimeter. If you're in per centimeter, it will mess up your images. So we're going to go down, we're going to leave the output sharpening. If you want, you can put a little bit in there and sharpen it for screen, standard. That's your choice, but I'm going to leave it off for the purposes of this. And then I'm going to hit export. And it is going to prepare to export first of all. And then it is going to finally start to export. And I'm going to just drag that down like that. And yeah, it's got to export 769 files. So obviously that will take a little while. So what I'm going to do is at this point, I'm going to speed the video up.
20 minutes later.
Okay, so that's just finished now. So we can, if I minimize Lightroom, we can now find our folder, which I can't remember what it was called. There we go, time-lapse named files. And if we go in there, you can see time-lapse 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way down to 769. So they're all now sequentially ordered with a number. This part is, that part in particular, that numbering and renaming of files with a number order is really important when you get the images into Premiere. So don't forget that, because otherwise what Premiere can do is it can shift images around and they end up out of sequence, so that can cause you real problems. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're actually going to open up Premiere. We're going to start a new project, and I'm just going to name that a new time lapse or something similar to that. What you call it is up to you. I'm going to leave everything else exactly as it is, and I'm going to hit OK and just let Premiere open a new thing. There we go. Okay, so Premiere is ready to go, which is great. And then we're going to do the normal thing. We're going to come up to File and Import, and we're going to browse to the desktop, and we're going to go into time-lapse named files. Now, what I am going to do is I am going to do these as icons because it's a lot easier, and then I'm going to hit just that first one. I'm not going to select them all, I'm just going to select number 1, time-lapse 1. I'm going to come down and hit this button, options, and it gives me this checkbox, image sequence. It's quite important that you hit options and put a tick into the image sequence checkbox. That's really important. Then hit import, and Premiere will import all of those images as one file. which is here. And I can now drag that onto my timeline. And so if I hit space now, it'll be a little bit jerky, but you can see that now all of those files are all in on my timeline, which is exactly where I want it to be. So clearly there's some work to do with it. We've got to smooth it out and render everything. But for the time being, we've got our entire time lapse as one file. Okay, what I'm now going to do is I'm actually going to come up to, I'm going to select my time-lapse file when it finally gets there. Okay, so there we go. And so I'm actually going to go to, there's two things I'm going to do with this. Number one, I'm actually going to go into the timeline. I'm going to make sure that my playhead is on the very first frame, obviously with time-lapse selected as well. And then I'm going to come up to scale, because what I want to do is I actually want to add another level of movement within the time-lapse. So with my playhead on the first frame, I'm going to come up to scale, and in that box where it says 100, I'm going to type in 135 and hit return. And then here's the important bit. I'm actually going to click this stopwatch that says toggle animation. I'm going to click that. What that does, that actually puts a keyframe in on frame number 1. I'm then going to move my playhead all the way to the final frame, which is that one. And then with my playhead on the final frame, I'm going to change that back to 100 and hit return, and that will automatically put a keyframe in. So you can see on the last frame, that scale is at 100, and as I pull it back, the scale changes as we go through the timeline. So you can see that actually what we're doing is we're adding a level of movement within there. Now, we're not quite done yet. I'm not quite ready to hit return and render the project. The next thing that I'm going to do is on the timeline here and on the clip, I'm actually going to hit Control click or right click if you've got double button mouse. I'm going to come up to speed duration, and in there I'm going to edit that, and I'm actually going to put that speed at around 700%. Okay, and what that does is that actually gives me a 4.1 second video. So now we're going to render that, so I'm going to hit return and it will start rendering the file. It's important that you do render the file every time, and this doesn't just apply to things like video time-lapse, I beg your pardon. What it does, it is important for, is whenever you do any edits and whenever you put any transitions in, it's important to render regularly so that you're, when you're playing back on preview, you're actually seeing what it should look like. So when this finishes rendering in about 7 seconds or so, it will automatically play. I'm not going to increase the size of the screen, but you'll see what it looks like. There we go, so that's our time-lapse done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to File, and then I'm going to go to Export Media or Control M if you want to do it quicker. And in there, once the dialog comes up, when it finally pops up, where are we? Here we go. So it's just finishing its rendering, that's why it's struggling a little bit at the moment. There we go, it's finished. And on output name, I'm going to double click that. You can leave it as whatever it is there if you like, it's entirely up to you, but I much prefer to change it. And I'm going to change it to time-lapse, let's call it time-lapse B, and I'm going to leave that on the desktop. You can see it's down as an MP4 file, and I'm just going to hit save there. Now that doesn't actually export, all it does is it changes this output name. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to come into preset. Normally what you would do is you would leave it, for your videos generally, you can leave it as match source, high bit rate, which gives you a slightly bigger file. But one of the things that I am going to do, because I'm uploading this to YouTube for you guys, I'm actually going to come down here and use a YouTube preset. Now I can use something as massive as 4K Ultra, and I've got the file sizes to be able to do that. But I'm not going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do it at 1080p Full HD, and that will update. And then I'm going to hit export. There we go. all done. And that's it, that's done. So if I now minimize Premiere and look for time-lapse B, and that's it, have a go. Send it over to me by email. Cheers, bye-bye.